Among all of the chipsets that have released along with AMD's AM4 platform, the B350 has proven to be the most popular, and for good reason. For around $100 US, you've got pretty much everything you need to get you going. So, seeing as the chipset is still fresh, today we're going to take a closer look at one of MSI's B350 offerings, the PC Mate motherboard. Over the AM4 platform, we have three main chipsets which all support the new Ryzen processors and also the 7th generation Athlon APUs. Starting from the bottom, we have the bare bones A320 chipset, which offers no overclocking or multi-GPU configuration. In the middle, we have the B350, which is going to allow you to overclock your processor, and on some B350 boards, there is support for multi-GPU configurations, as we'll talk about in a little bit. And finally, we have the X370 chipset, which AMD are calling their Enthusiast level boards. But as we've seen over the recent weeks, X370 and B350 both have the same overclocking potential. The main difference I've seen between X370 and B350 is that you may get faster RAM support all the way up to 3600 MHz on the X370 boards, whereas on the B350 chipset, you are limited a little bit with 3200 MHz and below. I say limited, but 3200 is still going to be plenty for most gamers and enthusiasts out there. You can pick up the PC Mate motherboard for a little over $90, which makes it fairly suitable for any build over $500 or $600, I'd say, and there's no reason why you wouldn't run a high-end system on this thing because it seriously has everything you need. The board is a neutral black and grey colour scheme, which you'll definitely appreciate if you're going for a clean looking build, and it's refreshing to see something understated in design, contrasted to the patterns and colours that are so common in motherboards these days. For I/O, we're looking at a PS2 port, VGA, dual-link DVI, HDMI, gigabit LAN, HD audio, and for USB we're slightly restricted with only two USB 2.0, two USB 3.1, and one USB 3.1 Type-C port. I would have loved to see a few more USB 3.1 ports, as a lot of us enthusiasts are using external sources and adapters, and only having 3 is quite limiting. So if you're planning on picking this up, you might also want to consider picking up an external USB hub with additional 3.1 ports. For RAM, we're looking at 4 RAM DIMMs running in dual channel with a max capacity of 64GB and frequency ceiling of 3200 MHz. The 4 total DIMM slots allow some upgradability in the future as well. In terms of CPU overclocking, I was able to stretch the Ryzen 5 1400 chip from its boost clock of 3.4 GHz all the way up to 4.05 GHz at a mellow 1.33 volts. So you should have no problems at all getting your Ryzen processor up to a nice overclock at stable voltages. You also get an Mdot 2 slot, which I honestly was not expecting in this price range, and it's features like this that give the more expensive B350 boards like the MSI Tomahawk and even X370 boards a run for their money and really step it up to that enthusiast level. Other than that, we've got 4 SATA ports which are nice and accessible to the right side of the board, definitely appreciated if you're trying to manage those cables. The PC Mate also supports AMD's Crossfire, allowing you to run multiple GPUs on the board at the same time. Now, I know a lot of you are wondering how this is possible on the B350 chipset, and that's because the second PCIe slot is 2.0x16, which is essentially half the throughput of the primary slot running at 3.0x16. This, however, does not make a huge difference in gaming, especially when paired with something modest like RX 480s or below. So if you want to run Crossfire on this board, then it's definitely doable and you should have no problems at all. If you do want dual 3.0x16 ports, however, for your multi-GPU setup, you'll have to step it up to the X370 chipset, but be prepared to fork out a little extra cash. The PC Mate also has 2 Pci X1 slots and 2 PCI slots. Lastly, we also have 6 fan headers with full control in the BIOS, so you can set some custom fan profiles and tune cooling and noise to your likings. And that is pretty much everything you need to know regarding the B350 PC Mate motherboard. It's not exactly branded as an enthusiast grade board, but as you've seen, you can definitely build a powerful system on this thing quite easily. I put this board into my most recent gaming PC build, Wraith, an $850 1080p gaming beast. If you haven't seen that yet, you know what to do. As always guys, a huge thanks for tuning in, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.